Nearly 7 years after their first matchup fell apart, Kimbo Slice and Ken Shamrock square off in St. Louis. Welcome into MMA Live Extra. I'm Phil Murphy. This Friday night, 41-year-old Kimbo Slice takes on 51-year-old Ken Shamrock in the main event of Bellator 138. To preview, we welcome in our ESPN MMA writers, Brett Okamoto and Reed Kuhn. Brett, will come your way first. A technical fight is the furthest thing from anyone's mind for this one. When Shamrock was in Bristol to announce the fight, he said, quote, "I'm going to enjoy this fight. I'm going to literally savor the moment. I'm not going to take him out in 30 seconds. What do you expect to see Friday?"
I'm expecting to see a fight between a 41-year-old and a 51-year-old, and I think, like you mentioned, I'm not expecting a technical fight. I don't think anybody is, and that's okay. You know, I think that Bellator has not promoted this fight as a technical masterpiece. This is a fun fight, one of Scott Coker's fun fights, where you take two guys. Everybody knows who Kimbo Slice is. Everybody knows who Ken Shamrock is. Let's put them in the cage together and see what happens. I think if your expectations are to see a technical fight, you're going to be disappointed. If your expectations are to see a 51-year-old Ken Shamrock and a 41-year-old Kimbo Slice go in, slug it out for a little bit, then there's a way to find some entertainment in this fight.
Reed, will come your way next. Who gets the betting edge? Who gets the edge, rather, with the betting line in this fight? And how long do we expect the fight to last?
Well, Kimbo Slice actually was nearly a 4 or 5-to-1 favorite when this fight was supposed to first go down in 2008. So he opened up about 4-to-1, and yet the market has actually come in on Shamrock's side. So the recent action, we'll see what happens during fight week. It could be a very volatile line because I think a lot of people will have opinions on this fight. But Kimbo Slice will be the favorite. It's just a question of how much. And in terms of the over-under, I'm not sure I've ever seen 5-to-1 on an under of 1.5 rounds. That is very low. Basically says this, no one is expecting this fight to last very long. And the market agrees it's still roughly 3-to-1 as it tightens up. But yeah, I think regardless of what happens, it's going to be over quickly.
All right, Brett, so we're expecting a quick fight, at least according to Vegas. The 51-year-old Shamrock may be the underdog, but we know he's not skipping any workouts, as evidenced in a photo he tweeted out. That said, Kimbo signed a multi-fight deal with Bellator. What's at stake for him in this bout?
You know, I don't think anything is at stake for him in terms of getting a win or getting a loss. To put it, you know, as nicely as I can, I don't think anybody really cares who wins this fight. They just want to be entertained. This is not a fight where either guy's trying to get to a belt, either guy's trying to move up the rankings. This is just, like I mentioned before, a fun fight. And I think if you look at the fact that this fight is headlining a Bellator card, why is it up there? It's not because these guys have been winning fights. It is because of their name recognition. And win or lose, Ken Shamrock and Kimbo Slice, they will both have name recognition after this bout. The question is, and the thing to keep in mind here, I think, is that if the fight is just awful and it's very clear that neither of these guys belongs in a cage anymore, then their selling power diminishes a little bit. So that's what's at stake really, is their selling ability, their marketability. And I think everybody is still, like I mentioned, going to know who these guys are after this fight. But if the fight looks terrible, no one's going to want to see them fight again. So that's really what's at stake. It's not the win or lose, it's how these guys look once the fight actually starts.
All right, so it's labeled a fun fight. We're still going to trouble you both for a prediction. Who do you have winning this fight? Reed, you lead off.
Well, ultimately, I think Bellator is the winner here, as long as it attracts a lot of eyeballs to this. As for the actual fight, it's Kimbo standing, it's Ken Shamrock on the ground looking for a limb to squeeze and to rip off. So it's a complete stylistic mismatch. I got to go with Kimbo. I think he does actually have decent hands, and he's going to land a punch on Ken Shamrock on the way in. But again, ultimately, I think the biggest prediction here is that this does not last long.
I'm with Reed. I think Kimbo has to be the pick here. He has got the heavier hands. The fight starts on the feet. If it started on the ground, maybe I'd be picking Ken Shamrock, but Shamrock, to win this fight, he probably has to get the fight down there, and I don't know how he does that anymore at age 51. So I'll pick Kimbo, but really anything can happen in this fight between these guys who have 90 years of age between them.
Guys, we appreciate the insight. For highlights and analysis from Slice Shamrock, keep it locked on the MMA page here on ESPN.com. Well, that'll do it for this edition of MMA Live Extra. For Reed Kuhn and Brett Okamoto, I'm Phil Murphy. Enjoy the fights.